Joining me today. I want to share a little bit about planning and visioning for your future year. A lot of us are trying to start the year out right and get things together and get things in order and organized. And also, for many of us this time of year, we're starting to sink in deeper to what our goals and vision for ourselves even are. And it's a mixture of both resting into the dream and feeling for what wants to happen, and also working through your willingness to actually call in what you want and even name what it is that you want. And then, of course, the next step is to see if we can manifest it. So this is kind of a two-part activity or two-part practice. On the one hand, we are looking directly at what we want and pointing our arrow towards the thing that we want to see in the world and in our lives. And at the same time, we are sort of letting go, not of the vision that we want, but the way we think it's going to happen, or the plan that we might have to make it happen, right? Because a lot of times, you'll hear in the manifesting community and law of attraction community that you're supposed to let go of wanting it. And that's not exactly true. You're supposed to let go of that there is a way you think it will happen, right? And oftentimes, because our mind and our ego usually is the one in charge, we tend to override our actual inner knowing in favor of things that make more sense, or seem like they're better timing, or seem like the thing you're supposed to do, right? So your goal in calling in your vision isn't to actually turn away from the thing you want the most, or let it go, or forget it, but turn away from the way you think it's going to happen. The other piece of this, the other thing that we're actively doing, is also being conscious of, as we get closer to achieving that thing, as we get closer to actually seeing the goal or the vision that we've had manifest in reality, what will happen right before that doorway or that gateway is we'll run up against a bunch of our nerves and anxieties and worries and fears. So this is where the sabotage that we often experience comes in. This is where we get close to a goal and then it blows up. And I'm sure you have had at least a few experiences when that has happened for you, right? So then it's like, okay, so I got close. And one way I can look at it is like, I never get what I want, but that's just telling the universe that that's what you like, never getting what you want, right? So the other way we can look at is like, okay, I got really close to this. What happened to prevent it from coming to fruition? And where in me can I make some shifts so that I'm a little bit more surrendered and willing to receive the thing that I say that I want? So the way that our blocks come in at this time, right before our dreams come to fruition, is in a lot of different ways, and it's normally not direct, right? So we'll get close to getting what we want, and we get afraid of what that might mean. So oftentimes, getting what we want, we're afraid that it means that we might actually lose friends or family, or maybe we're not ready, or maybe we'll fail. All of these things that we actually have going on in our inner world, that is actually the block that's happening. So what happens is usually it doesn't show up in a way that looks like, oh, I was afraid that I would have to lose some money. Usually those fears are moving subtly underneath the conscious level and then coming out in ways that, again, are not in direct relationship to what we think is causing them. So my fear might be that I might lose friends and family if I achieve the goal that I have for myself. And so to make sure that that doesn't happen, what I might do is subconsciously suddenly become super busy with something else, have some project that's requiring a lot more time or energy than I initially planned. It might look like suddenly I have to take care of someone else. It might look like covering up our feelings with substances. It might look like suddenly getting in an accident, getting injured, or suddenly becoming ill. It can also even look like This happens to me a lot where I suddenly start to worry a lot about really irrelevant things. I think ahead to something a place that I'm not at right now, and start worrying and problem solving something that does not matter at all and is not even a likelihood. And even if it was a likelihood, it's not happening right now. That's one way it shows up for me a lot. It can look like not sleeping. It can look like, of course, self-doubt. It can look like making poor health choices. It can look like focusing on somebody who's wronged you. So the list goes on here, right? So all of these things are distractions. These are the way that the ego takes us, our energy and focus away from what we want and more on the things that that can pull our energy away from it and focus on our fears, right? And so the practice is to, one, get really good at noticing the way that your fears subconsciously show up in life, right? Are you one that tends to get angry at somebody? Are you somebody that tends to bring in a whole bunch of extra things to do? Are you somebody that ends up having to bring in, somebody that needs your care or your help, right? And again, for me, it was worrying about a lot of little things or thinking too far ahead. So you want to get understanding of what your patterns are. What are the things that happen that you do, or maybe that you don't do, but seem to happen regularly right before you make a breakthrough. So now you have eyes on it. The next thing you want to do, and really the most important thing, is when you are getting close to that breakthrough and that thing shows up, stare it in the face and don't turn away, right? So if you're somebody who normally has, somebody shows up and suddenly needs help, right? I mean, and just to be clear, there's a difference between emergencies and a patterning of codependence or a patterning of saving people. So maybe you have a friend that's all of a sudden going through a breakup. So you can be supportive of your friend without having to drop everything in your life and show up every time that friend needs you, right? It might look like you have a young adult child who has something that goes up, and every time it seems like you're about to have a breakthrough, something happens in their life and they need you, right? So what your job is to not take the bait that you normally take. And again, that doesn't mean that you don't care or you have no compassion, but these are the things that normally draw you in that you used to do unconsciously. And what life is actually asking you to do is change that pattern. Right? For me, again, where I tend to start thinking ahead and worrying about things that are completely irrelevant, but the practice that I have is when I notice that I'm doing that, it's like, oh, aha, I'm doing the thing that keeps me distracted, that keeps my energy spread out and scattered out around, so I'm not focused and present with myself at the task that I'm doing right now. And so just knowing that allows me to say, oh, I'm doing the thing, and do the opposite instead, right? So know what you're doing. So the next time when you come to that place, you can actually give yourself a chance to make a different choice. And then the last piece is to attach purpose to your choices and your motivation. So the other piece with calling our vision forward and manifesting our desires is to usually requires that we have to change some habits. Sometimes there's things we're doing wrong. Sometimes it's stuff based on trauma. Sometimes it's societal training. And sometimes it's just straight up habit that we need to undo, right? And that can be hard. Habits are hard to break. So I use my purpose as motivation to keep me focused on making the choices that benefit me the most, right? And so let me feel into some examples of this. Right. So sometimes when I am doing tasks at hand and I get to a place where I am preparing to share something vulnerable, I'll notice that I start to get into other tasks. I'll suddenly kind of like spiral out and find myself doing 3 different things. Or maybe I'll find myself like going to the kitchen to get a snack, right? So I'm catching my habit and my sabotage pattern, right? And then I'm making the different choice. And the way that I coach myself into making that choice sometimes is like, okay, let's focus. You're doing the thing that's taking you away from what you want. And it's because you're afraid to share something vulnerable right now, right? And remember that the reason that you're doing this is to help people learn how to use their gifts, learn how to use their spiritual gifts and marry their personal experience with their spiritual gifts to create really powerful practices that help others. That's motivating to me. That lights me up. That's a lot of fun. So that helps me stay on track. Same thing if you find yourself having somebody that comes in and desperately needs you all of a sudden, right? And maybe that's a family member, a kid, or a friend, and you're always the one that's giving and you're not receiving. Again, it doesn't mean you have to cut them off all the way, but it might mean that you need to put up some boundaries. And if you're in the habit of not putting up boundaries, if you're in the habit of dropping everything to help that other person, then this is where you can implement this self-coaching. Okay, me, here it is. I finally had time to relax and de-stress, or I finally had time to work on this thing and something's coming up and it's taking me away from it. And so I need to put up some boundaries with this person, and that's uncomfortable for me, right? But I know that the thing that I'm working towards has a big purpose. And remind yourself of the purpose. And remember that staying in line with that, with your motivation and your purpose, is going to help other people more than you dropping everything to help this one person right now, right? So so this is a really important part of the practice. We have to be able to coach ourselves. We all need mirrors and other people to really make our big breakthroughs, but 90% of the stuff you can do by coaching yourself. Once you know what it is that you do that takes you away from what you want, and you have tools to help you stay on track. Okay. And then one last comment here is the tricky place that it can get you is when you get to the choice point and you don't make the choice that's best. So then the next place is often many of us go into the self-hate. So this is the place where we get mad at ourselves. We tell ourselves we can't ever get anything done, or what's wrong with you. And this is the place that we also want to watch, because this is more training for our system. This shows us patterns our system even more to like the negative attention, right? And also it brings our energy down. It makes us feel less motivated. So just remember, when you get to those points where you have an opportunity to make a different choice, and if you don't make that choice, if it gets you again, if you fall for it again, if you are feeling lazy or you felt like you didn't have any self-discipline that day, that's fine. We are human. It is okay to do that. And actually, the more that we punish ourselves when we don't make the choices that we want, the more it causes a separation in our system, and the cycle gets even worse. So you have to be able to just forgive yourself when these things happen and remind yourself that you actually wanted something different, so that the next time it's a little bit easier for you to make the choice. But habits are hard to change. So they require time, they require patience, and they require motivation, right? So along the lines of doing this manifesting work, I also wanted to share a video, a training actually that I made recently, and it is how you can use shamanic practice to support your money flow. So this is a really nice tool to use in conjunction with your visioning for the year and in looking at the goals that you have for yourself. I have that video posted somewhere privately, so if you'd like to have a look at that, just send me a little direct message. Let me know you're interested in the money flow video, and I'll be happy to send that over to you right away.